Hear my good morning. I just see my red light coming on. Good morning and welcome. I hope some of you joined us for that meditation, and I hope that the energy that's up on this dais, I hope it was able to come into your homes. Very sweet, sweet energy here with I mean, there's 4 of us, just to say. Keshava was here as well, though, so 5 of us meditating together. Just lovely. So, welcome. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. I think there's a chat area in Facebook, and I've said several times now, but I'll repeat it. You can send questions right in on live stream, but you need to be registered with them. It takes 2 minutes to register. Do you go to livestream.com to do that? Can somebody? I've done it, but I forget. Yeah. And then you'll come back into our live stream, and then you can ask questions. Otherwise, you cannot. So it would be good to give yourself that opportunity. So I'll just start by responding to some questions that we already have. And if you have more as we go, please send them in to us.
Here's our first question. It begins with a bit of an explanation and then the question. Master said environment is stronger than willpower. As so many of our normal outside activities, in particular our spiritual and other uplifting activities, have been closed due to the pandemic, we have less distractions and have to spend more time with ourselves, redefining what we thought was our environment. In pre-pandemic times, I craved time alone, but now I have days when I'm just tired of being with me. This spills into meditation, where the mind resists and motivation for meditation is weaning. Can you offer some thoughts on how to get through this time? I know it is temporary, but the guilt of not meditating deeply creates a lingering inner disappointment.
That's a really beautiful summary, in a way, of what I'm sure so many people are living with and going through. Of course, I don't know who sent this question in, but last week I took walks with 3 different friends who I haven't seen that much, and each of them told me that they've been having a very hard time meditating. So I'm saying that just to say it's not just that it's common, but clearly there's a strong force working against our being able to meditate or go as deep, at least for some people. And I think I'm saying it because one of the worst things that we can feel on our path, though you didn't use this word, but feeling any guilt is such a sink of energy. Any time that we spend feeling badly about our actions. You know, Keshava opened our meditation with a prayer. It was a beautiful prayer. I don't remember it all, but he did include a phrase that was something like, free us or relieve us from our past transgressions. And it just stuck with me. This isn't a past transgression. I understand you're asking me about how to live with this in this moment. But just in terms of my first wanting to say, let's not get down on ourselves, because that energy is very costly spiritually. So that line, just free us. Let each moment be a new beginning on our path. Each moment is a new beginning. All we need to do is remember that. And I thought when Keshava said that, I'm going to hold on to that because it's so easy to feel or to reminisce in a way about what we haven't done or even what we can't do. So if right now we can't meditate, which is the truth for certain people, I would say try as much as you can to take some time each day doing something that's spiritually uplifting, that's not trying to just sit still and empty your mind. There's something about this for a lot of people, and I've been trying to relate to it because it's not my reality, but I'm talking to, connected with, hearing, really feeling compassion for so many people who are struggling with that. So I want to say, do the best you can, and then just keep letting it go. If what it means is that you can just talk to Master or to Swamiji, just as you walk around during the day, that you include them in your activity. It can be so simple. Master, come with me while I make myself lunch. Or now I'm going to do some work or be with my children. Master, come along. Or Swamiji, be here. Or listening to chants, or spending 10 minutes a day writing, handwriting, a mantra. Take any mantra that you want, or make it up. Just to say, even if you just wrote God, 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 or God, Christ, Guru. It doesn't need to be complicated. I've mentioned this many times in sermons and different talks, but I have filled, I don't know how many books, just lined books that I used to buy. You can still buy, of course, at East West, or you get them online. And I would just sit at my altar and write either some mantra, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jaya Jaya Ram. I wrote that, or have written that, literally thousands, I don't know how many thousands of times in books. Or I want to try and think of what it was that I wrote. It's not coming to me, but I filled a book with it. 1 year, right around the turn of the century, actually, when it was becoming 2000. And I felt a little lost at the time. And I just started writing to God. You must be with me. Be here now. You be here now. I couldn't find him, but I knew enough to call on him. Whatever words come to you, very powerful to just write, make it short, but get into the repetition of it for a few minutes, because that energy, that willingness, that commitment, that desire to do that, in and of itself will draw your energy up. Every one of these things that we do, energization, if you can't sit and meditate, maybe you can do the energization exercises if you know them. Maybe you can do super conscious living exercises if you know them. Just saying, I am awake and ready, it changes everything in us. And if you do that with commitment, with focus, just that. So do what we can do to draw our energy in and bring it up enthusiastically, energetically, and maybe you just can't meditate right now. This time, this virus, this isolation, all of it it will come to an end. I was thinking about it this morning. I was thinking, what we don't know right now is what's going to happen as these other strains come from wherever they're coming, South Africa, England. Nobody knows. I don't know if there's going to need to be another hump to get over, but maybe not. If enough people, those people who are willing to take the vaccine, take it, and God knows millions of people are getting this virus. The United States has so many cases, which has been horrible, but it's also leading us to a time where we'll actually be able to go outside again, be with people again. Might be a little longer till we can take our masks off, but not much. I actually feel, and when I say this, I mean months, I don't mean weeks, but still I feel the end coming. So we have to do what we can do in the moment and hold that. This is not forever. This is something we're going through now, and every single thing we do to move towards God, even if it's not meditation, everything we do to practice feeling uplifted, feeling whatever joy we can, true joy, feeling peaceful, feeling calmness, anything, it becomes part of our path, part of our story. It serves us forever. So we're always talking about meditation, and it's important, it's meaningful. And then sometimes we just can't. And when we can't, we do what we can do. And we're honest with ourselves and with God about it.
Because there are different tones at the chakras, and our sixth chakra is our sending station, would oming with that tone be more powerful and appropriate? I'm asking particularly in terms of healing prayers.
The answer is definitely yes. Everything we do, all of our practices are moving us towards spending as much time at the sixth chakra, the spiritual eye, as we possibly can. And even when we just raise our eyes and keep ourselves focused there, you look at any of the pictures of our masters, the eyes are very, very often turned up just a bit, drawing the energy up to the point between the eyebrows. It's very powerful energy there. It is the vibration of Om. So when you say, would it be good for us to be oming there? Yes, because the more we can chant Om internally with our attention at the point between the eyebrows, we are drawing. It's a magnetic force that draws all of the energy through the other chakras right up to the point between the eyebrows. And then we send that energy out. It's also true of the heart chakra. We mention this all the time, that Swami Kriyananda led with his heart. If you watched him walk, when he entered a room, there was such force when Swamiji, or Master, but the two of them, when they entered a room, and they were always upright, heart wide open, drawing energy up. But that energy that flows from the heart to the point between the eyebrows is very uplifted and powerful energy. So yes, as much as possible, send that energy out when you're doing healing prayers from the point between the eyebrows with your heart open.
I have somebody in my life whom I love deeply and who has hurt me and become almost like a stranger. But to not love this person anymore feels like losing the heart's feelings. Is it possible to love someone who has hurt you, even if you'll never see that person again, and to hold the heart's love intact?
This is a very beautiful and very deep question that really comes right to the heart of the spiritual path. So I love that you noticed and then said, I can't hold all of your words right now, but something like, if I don't do this, I'm losing my heart's love. And of course, that's true. And it's very hard. What you're asking is very hard, and probably something each and every one of us has dealt with so many times in this life, because we have spent so much of our time living, dealing, reacting on this material plane, on this egoic plane. And so not only what is natural for the ego, but what we're supported to do in our behavior so many times is, if people don't love us well, if they've hurt us, if they retract their love, just in any way, say mean things, leave us. As I think you said, they're no longer even in your life, but I think you implied you were left. That just happens. And we're supported to be angry with them, to feel hurt by them, to want them to be behaving other than how they're behaving. I've told this story too. My mother, who I wound up in a beautiful place with, fortunately, before she left her body. We had several years of a very uplifted, loving relationship. But the first 30 years of my life with her, maybe even a few more than that, were very difficult. She was somebody who had been hurt, and so she hurt. She was critical, she was demeaning. She spent a lot of my life telling me why I was never going to be able to succeed at things. By God's grace, I kept trying. But that's very powerful when you hear that kind of stuff. And I spent a whole year of my life. Now, this was right before I was steeped in this path. I was on the path already, but it wasn't the forefront of my life yet. That happened very quickly after this. But I spent a year of my life practicing forgiveness consciously. I read about forgiveness. I took workshops on forgiveness. I prayed about it. I did affirmations about it. I didn't have the subtlety that I'm going to speak about in a moment. But one morning, I woke up like that. I woke my husband up. I said, "You won't believe what happened." He said, "What?" Out of his sound asleep. I said, "I've forgiven my mother." He looked at me. He said to me, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm certain." I said to him, "I feel it in my heart. There's not even in a corner any upset with her anymore." It was unbelievably freeing for me. And then we moved into these beautiful years together. So, yes, it's absolutely possible to love people who have hurt you. My mother never apologized to me. She could never fully own what she had done. I could say all of what she had done. She couldn't own even a little bit of it. But I love her, not just loved. I love my mother. I love that soul. So absolutely it's possible. But now what I've learned, since I've been on this path, and I've been studying, reading, praying, meditating all these more years, is this. As long as we are living and wanting human love to take care of us, to help us to feel safe and whole and grounded, we can't do that. We will not forgive the people who hurt us because people hurt us. Master said, and I remember this, I won't have the exact quote, but I read it when I was teaching a class a few weeks ago on how do we deal with hurt feelings from Swamiji's book, Secrets of Emotional Healing. Patanjali said it. That's right. Patanjali said, I wish I had the beginning of this quote, but he was basically saying, why would you look to this world to solve your problems? He said, every person is going to hurt you. Everybody, Patanjali said this, is going to hurt you. The only answer is consciousness. That's what he said. That's extraordinary. That's very close to his words. And I think what we need to see is God in that person, God's love in that person. What we are seeking is divine relationship. That's what we're seeking. We're seeking to see God everywhere and to love God in everyone. And when we do that, there's not even anything to forgive. And I can speak from experience because I've had the experience of having some very challenging life experiences with people. We all have. But I've done this consciously, practicing unconditional love. And unconditional love only happens at a soul level. The ego will not allow that for us. It just won't. So when we're living from an egoic place, we will not be able to forgive people. Whenever we can accomplish raising our energy and living in a soul reality, we will naturally, again, it's so beyond forgiveness. You remember the story of the great saint who left his ashram and went into the village one day? And he was a saint. Sai Ganesh recently told this story in his Sunday service. I didn't know this, but he was the saint. He lived in, his reality was so in God that he didn't even wear clothes. Maybe if he went into town, he put on a little loincloth, but generally walked around naked. I didn't know that was the saint who did that, but this is what Sai Ganesh said. And he went into town one day, and a lot of little boys were making fun of him. We've all heard this story, or many of us have many times. But it's such a powerful story, worth retelling very often. And many of the kids were picking up rocks and throwing them at him, and from their end, making fun of him. But he was happy, and of course he was joy. So he was in town in that joyful state. And he went back to his ashram, and his disciples looked at him. He was bleeding, blood all over his back. And they were saying, Master, what happened? And he said, oh, I went into town and I had so much fun with the little boys. We were laughing and they were playing and they were throwing stones. You see, everything in life is about our reality. If we try and live in somebody else's reality, we're lost. We're lost. We've lost those moments in life. But if we live from that place of divine love, we don't even notice when we're being badly treated. Most of us aren't there. I'm still telling all the stories about how quickly I can remember to get back to that state or not at times. We're all making the effort. We're all sincerely walking this path. But absolutely, and I'll say one more thing about this. In my work, my professional work, which is coaching people, I hear so many stories of people who were not treated well by their parents. It's such a common thing because, after all, our parents are not enlightened beings. They are living in life with their own limitations, and then they're trying to be parents, raise another soul. They often haven't even thought of us as a soul. And they simply make a lot of mistakes, and they teach us things about ourselves that are not true. And this is a harsh word, but it's the truth. They lie to us. This is what I said about my mother. She laughed at me when I told her I wanted to be a doctor. She literally laughed, but it was like this, oh, honey, you can't be a doctor. You don't have it in you. It sounded like the sweetest thing in the world. You go to nursing school. You'll try hard, you'll be a good nurse. I believed her. I absolutely believed her, and I went to nursing school. And I was a good nurse. And quite frankly, it was a great thing. I think all doctors ought to go to nursing school because you learn so much there that you never learn in medical school. That's essential to treating people well. But that's not the point. The point is, I did not have a mother who said, absolutely, you will be an extraordinary physician, and I'm going to help you in every way that I can. No, she told me I couldn't do it. It was not the truth. But we don't know that when we're younger. We take all of that in. And often we're enraged with our parents. We don't always know it, but it affects our behavior. Then I see these people and I'm coaching them, and they haven't forgiven their parents. They didn't even know that was there. But it's affecting their ability to open their hearts and love. And even if those parents have left their body, to me, the most important thing is to forgive them. It's sort of like Christ said, forgive them. They know not what they do. Very important. Even if people are not in their body, if we haven't transcended that reaction in us, that hurt in us, then we need to practice forgiveness. And as we forgive them in ways that are inexplicable to the mind, we, as Keshava said in his prayer, we move beyond many of our own transgressions. It's just interesting how it happens, but it is an opening of the heart and the heart chakra so energy can flow. If we're angry with somebody, our heart and our heart chakra, two different things, but they're shut down and we're just blocked and we can't find God. God is love. So we need to be able to love fully, to feel that divine presence. I hope that answers your question and inspires you to open your heart.
I want to make lasting changes in my outer life. I feel that I've been stuck in many recurring patterns of karma, such as in financial instability, finding the right career.
Excuse me, Lakshmi, can you start over? I didn't understand a few of your words, which were important.
I want to make lasting changes in my outer life. I feel that I may be stuck in many reoccurring patterns of karma, such as finding financial stability, finding the right career, or even making healthy choices with food and exercise. I feel a lot of stuck energy that I am unable to shift. What can I do to start overcoming them?
I'll share this with you. I just closed my eyes for a moment, and what came into my mind is, Master, answer this question well for this person. And immediately following that prayer demand was the two words, love God. That's what came to me. So I'll share that with you first. It's not a throwaway. I will say a lot more words, but it is the truth. It's very tempting to want to make changes in the world. This is a wonderful question, by the way, and it's complex. So I'm going to come at it in a few ways, and then hopefully it will become a perfect whole that you can walk away with and that will help you change. It is very tempting to want to make changes in the world and to believe that those changes will fix, release, allow energy to flow and to neutralize karma. And to a certain degree, there's truth in that, because we do need to change our behavior to change our karma. If you're somebody, if one is somebody that steals all the time, steals in all of the ways that Patanjali talks about stealing. You can steal money, you can steal somebody's pride. There's many ways to steal, but if you're somebody who steals, you actually need to quit stealing before energy can flow. This is the whole point of the yamas and niyamas, the do's and the don'ts. So we do need to look at behaviors. And sometimes it's easy to just start with simple things. I don't know what that would be for people. If people are having trouble exercising, I tell them, go out and take a 5-minute walk each day. 5 minutes is doable. Set some goal that's doable so you begin to have the karma of success, whatever it is. If it's financial stability, it may be, and I understand when you refer to that you're talking about something much bigger than what I'm about to say. But when we're doing it out there and we've been failing at it, and everything's karma. Everything is karma. But we can't often, most of us can't just say, I'm done with that karma. Doesn't always work that way. maybe for the greatest of saints, but otherwise most of us can't. And it's the effort that we put into changing that can help us transform. So you may need to start saving little bits of money each month, or you may need to start giving away little bits of money each month. And giving money, even when we don't have it, or we're terribly afraid of that. This is why tithing is in the Bible. And I understand it's very hard for people to give away 10% of what they make. That's very challenging for most people. Not all people, but for a lot of people. But if one makes a commitment to give back to God that which is already his, which is the money's energy, and I am speaking about financial stability now, you say, I will give whatever, $10 a month to a charity of my choice. I will find a way to give that money back to God, to a religious work. This is why people give monthly to Ananda. And it's about money magnetism. You feel that you're giving something away, but in the act of giving, more can flow into and through you. It doesn't make sense to the logical mind, but what I want to say, remember, I said there's many parts. Swamiji was in the hospital once. We actually didn't know if he would live. He was extremely ill. He had bilateral pneumonias. He was already older. He was very ill. And the doctor who was taking care of him came in and said, I want to live a good life. I want to live by the spiritual principles that I've learned. But in the world, how can I do that when so many other people are lying and cheating and stealing and buying their way into places, or in this case, spending more money to get their children into college? But Swamiji could feel that this man was suffering because he knew the truth, yet he had to function in the world. You know it's karma in the case of this question, but how can we transmute that karma in the real world and make lasting changes? Lasting changes only happen at the spiritual level. Nothing in this world that you do is lasting. It's the effect that it has on your spiritual reality. It's the energy that flows through you and back to you, that you allow to keep flowing, that is lasting. That's what imprints on your soul, so that when you come in next time, you don't have bad money karma, or you can find a good relationship later in this life. You don't even have to wait for your next life. But it's this always the spiritual reality behind the world. So the fears that we have out there, and money's a perfect example, financial stability, because it's very hard to talk to people about money. They actually feel if they hold on to it, they'll be safer. And it's just, what did everybody think in 1929, right before the stock market crashed? Or Master saying, there will come a time when the money will not be worth the paper it's printed on. Yogananda said that. So I'm not saying that whoever asked this question is doing that, but I'm trying to show that what is lasting, what is transformational, what allows us to transmute karma from what it is to higher realities is always of the spirit. So it's always behaving, finding the way to behave to remember everything is God. Everything. And no matter what it is in the world, if we approach it from the place of the spiritual reality behind it, so for money and financial, I didn't finish that story, which is very important, forgive me. When that doctor left the room, Swamiji said to the person who was with him, I think it was Dharmadas at the time, but it doesn't matter. Get a piece of paper and a pencil, he said. He was dying. Swamiji was very close to death. And he wound up writing down a lot of spiritual principles. He called it material success through yogic principles. He wrote a 26-part series of a book, a huge book. It wasn't ever published as a book, I don't think. I think it was published as like more of a notebook because there's 26 lessons, and he felt that people would dive deeply into one every 2 weeks. I highly recommend it for you. You can still get it through Crystal Clarity. Material success through yogic principles, which is so meaningful. There are so many stories of people who hardly had a dime. I mean, well, I have an entire collection of these stories from decades, but when they got a dime, they gave a penny of it away. When they got $10, they tithed $1. And lo and behold, the stories, they're miracles. They're what we call miracles, but which Thich Nhat Hanh says, miracles are natural. It's when they're not occurring that we have to worry, because miracles are really an experience of God's presence. And something would happen. Somebody, all the stories with Master and Swamiji, but with all of the people just like us, they needed $300 or they couldn't pay their rent, and a stranger would come out of nowhere and give them $300, or somebody would die and exactly the amount of money would be left in the will. When we hold on, energy cannot flow. When we think that we have to look for exactly the perfect relationship to make our lives work, no, it doesn't. But when we allow energy to flow, and through spiritual magnetism, we call the right relationship. When we are generous in the world in all ways, and as we happen to be part of a book study that's studying right now. We just studied the first chapter of that book. So I don't remember, though I've read it all. I even taught it all, but I don't remember what all of the chapters are. But every one of the chapters is about exactly what you're asking. And what Swamiji wanted to say to that doctor, you don't move anywhere in your life. You do not shift your karma by only doing it in the world. Even if you're a good person, even if you're not trying to buy your way or your children's ways into college, which we all just saw all over the news. All of these famous and wealthy people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get their children, and not trying, getting their children into the right schools. Where did that lead? Look at it. We can say, oh, I'd never do that. But we do our own version of it by thinking that living in the material world, trying only to affect change in the material world, trying to get what we can from the material world. No, it won't work. But by looking at the spiritual practice behind that, how do I move more towards financial security? It's going to be in one of the chapters of that book. how is it that I actually draw people to me that I want to be interacting with? And forgive me, but I don't remember what else you mentioned. But in a way, it doesn't matter. It's wonderful that you have the desire to do that, to make, as you said, a beautiful phrase, lasting changes. Lasting changes. And that's why I fully believe Master put that thought in my mind. Love God. Now, of course, it's good to make changes in your diet and to eat good food and food with higher vibrations. And it's absolutely wonderful to begin an exercise program. But you know, I have a very dear friend who just lost a lot of weight. Actually, I have several friends, honestly, we have several people right in the community who in the last couple of years lost big amounts of weight, like 100 pounds, maybe each of them, or close. Every one of them has spoken to me, and they changed their diet dramatically. They're eating very well, but each one of them's doing it differently, but each one of them's eating well. So of course, you eat well. But every one of them said to me, what really happened is my consciousness changed. For whatever reason, I let go of this fear. I quit using food in this way. I started loving the food I was eating. I prayed more over my food. I felt that I was receiving something. My consciousness changed, and that weight left. Even in those circumstances. So, as Master says, love God. Find God everywhere, in everything. Ask God, how is it that I actually attain financial security? It's probably not what you think. It's probably not. Which doesn't mean that you shouldn't be pursuing your life stream in terms of the work that you do. Or it doesn't mean that you shouldn't want to be responsible about money. Sri Yukteswar said, live within your purse. But it does mean that just like this, like being able to absorb what the saints said, live within your means, so much more important than amassing a huge amount of money. Because in so many ways, and I have so many stories of it that I won't tell now, but I have, where God himself has stepped in and taken care of me. I've always just been fine. Not as a child, we were very, very poor. We had no money, literally often not enough food to eat, not as many clothes as I needed to go to school, things like that. That's how I grew up. But after I grew up, I've never had a lot of money, but I've always been able to have everything I need. It's always come to me, one way or another. And I don't live excessively, though I like good things when I buy them. But somehow, through friends, through an extra 2 clients showing up, just out of the blue when I needed a little more for some money for something. But I've always talked to God about it in recent years. I've always talked to God and asked that question. Master, you answer this question. You do it. Because it's complex. Because we need to be doing well in the world. We have to make that effort. But it's got to be with right attitude. It has to be in tune with all of the yamas and niyamas, or we won't shift our karma. Shifting our karma, I'll just end with this. I've said it, but I want it to be the last thing everybody remembers. Shifting our karma means living in terms of a soul reality, of our soul's reality. That's the way we make karmic changes.
I am meditating. I am meditating, but my mind is very busy. It feels like I spend all of my time getting there, and I'm not able to be there. Being persistent in my meditation has been what I can do, but there is less joy. Is it okay to keep meditating with less joy, or should I instead do some of those, and they're referring to your question from earlier, other things that you recommend? Energization.
I don't think it's good, and there are many stories from both Master and Swamiji. You remember the story that Swamiji told in the path about Master. He had a young devotee, and she was meditating, but when she went to him, he called her, and she said, "I was meditating." She didn't not go, as one of the monks did one time. But, was that Master himself with Sri Yukteswar wouldn't answer Sri Yukteswar's call because he said he was meditating. I think somebody can help me out here who remembers this if they do. But Master said, your mind, I think this is the time where he said, I know how you were meditating. Your mind was like leaves in the wind or on the wind, or it was something like that. Meaning your mind was quite scattered. They always know the truth about us, so no point in trying to fool anybody, which of course you're not. Or that young woman who was a devotee, a disciple of Master's, and she would sit for a long time, but he said she really couldn't meditate. She couldn't be focused, she couldn't feel joy. He didn't say all of that, but she wasn't meditating deeply. If we're meditating deeply, there's joy. And he said, in that case, he said, but she's so sincere, I'll meditate for her. That is so beautiful, and it's good for all of us to be able to hold on to that. There have been many times over these past decades where I haven't been able to focus the way I would have liked to have focused. And I just took the stance of a little child, and I was very sincere. And I felt not only that I could ask this, but I felt that he would do it. And I said, Master, you're just going to have to meditate for me now. You just have to do this for me. And I would sit, and I would feel much more of his presence after I reached for him. And so I'll just say, that's one thing we can always do. And if you can feel his presence, you would know, you would guess what I'm about to say, but with his presence comes such a lightness of being, so much love, just that he would come to us like that we would call earnestly with our heart, and he would come and be there. And he will. Remember when Swamiji was with him out at 29 Palms, and he would go to stumble, and Swamiji would have to watch and make sure he didn't fall. And Master said, I'm in so many bodies. Sometimes I forget which one I need to keep up. He's with all of us all the time. So I answered a different question before, and I would say to you, depending on how much you're struggling, of course you can do all of those things. They're all good things to do. Everything we do on this path, consciously, and again, with awareness that we want to be moving on the path, everything's just a tool. Even Kriya Yoga, it's a tool. If we're having an experience, if we're practicing our Kriya, or if you're not a Kriya Bond, and you're deep in meditation, and you begin to have an experience of the divine in any way, of course you stop. You don't say, I'm going to leave this and go back to my Kriya or back to my deep meditation. We're doing those things to have an experience of the divine. That's what we mean when we say to find God. We mean to move back into that state of oneness. And we know when we're there, if we're practicing any technique and we begin to hear Om, we go into the Om, we leave what we're doing. Being in Om is being with God. Those are all of our goals, and we have to remember that. So yes, if we're writing mantra in a book, or if we're practicing energization, or if we just write out all of our prayers, if we start talking to God, just talk to God. If we can't meditate, but really talk to God. Those are all wonderful things to do. But if you can, if you're able to sit, but you're not sitting like, I'm going to stay here no matter what. No, don't do that. That's not meditating. If you're in pain in any way, physical pain certainly, but in pain because you can barely sit, literally people torture themselves. Don't do that. That's not right. But the first thing to do is to ask Master if he'll come to you. And I don't know what he does with anybody else. I'm not sure. I mean, other than the stories that people have told me. So I know he comes to a lot of people often. But call on him genuinely, sincerely, and see if he'll come and help you. That's the very first thing to do. And if you can't feel him in any way, which does not mean he's not listening, and it doesn't mean he doesn't love you, it means not yet. He knows, Master knows. And you have to believe that if he's not coming, again, it's not because he's not right there. It's just not time. So, as we sing so often, keep calling him. But if you need to do something else that might help you find joy, then, as I said, just keep talking to him. I call that prayer. And I talk to God a lot. I don't know what it means. I always feel like he's going to listen because I annoy him so much that I've said this many times. He'll say, "Oy, I just have to take care of her to get her off my back." But of course, I don't think he really feels that way, but I do bother God a lot. And it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. So try that.
I'll take a moment before we ask our next question and invite the many of you out there who are watching with us today. If you have questions, please do feel free to drop them into the chat. We're here and we're watching, and we are eager to answer any of your questions. Here's our next question. A few years ago, there was a period when I had a series of superconscious experiences in meditation. I haven't had any such overt experiences recently. Have I fallen spiritually? Were those experiences not real to begin with? How ought I relate to those experiences now?
That's a very good question. I mean, it's a good question because I think it happens to a lot of people. And then when they're not in the superconscious experience, when they're in their mind, because the mind, again, all of these things that happen in meditation, whatever joy we feel, all of those 8 attributes, whatever true peace we feel, the mind cannot relate to it. It's very important to remember that we spend the vast majority of our time in our logical, rational mind that wants to judge or figure out. That's why I was very careful to say just before, don't think if God doesn't come to you right away that he's not listening. Don't think that. That's a mistake. That's the rational mind saying, he must be displeased with me. He doesn't love me if he's not embracing me right now. The mind does that. The mind is so limited. It's limited in a way that's very hard to imagine until you transcend it in some ways and see it from an expanded state. Last night I was teaching a class on cynicism, and I wasn't teaching it on cynicism. I was teaching it on how to, I forget what Swamiji's word was. Does anybody? How to, it wasn't neutralize, but transcend. He uses some different word in his secrets books. It was part of the secrets class. But it was how to move beyond cynicism is what it was. And there was even the affirmation, on week 52, we do these affirmations every week on high-mindedness, alluded to this, but there was some other place that I read in preparation for the class where Master talked about your view is so limited from the bottom of a mountain. If you're just starting, you have such a limited view, yet that's your reality. If you're just starting, even on a hike, if you think of it, you don't see that much from here, but from the mountain top, your view is so much more expanded. So it's very important to realize that the mind is functioning on the ground, and that's all it sees. And it figures things out from that perspective, and it feels true. They love me, they don't love me, they're critical of me, they're judging me. I can't do this, I'm good at that. All of the things that the mind does. And then we anthropomorphize God. Wow, I just got stuck on that word. I'm not even really sure I got it, but you have it. And we think that God is man-like, that he functions as we do. No, I mean, not at all. So beyond our ability, it's beyond our ability to think about it, but we have to remember that all the time. We cannot judge our spiritual experiences with our mind. Now, back to the question, lest you think I forgot. Those superconscious experiences that we have affect our spiritual, astral, I would say, spine. They do. They come with them, they have an energy, they're real, they change us forever. And it's like building something often. You lay down a foundation. You don't see the foundation of your house later, but it's essential. You don't see it, but you realize if the foundation shifts or cracks or whatever happens to it, your whole house is in jeopardy. That's part of the way that we grow spiritually. So we have those experiences, and it's very important to remember them as magnificent. Oh, that's where I'm going. That's what this spiritual effort is about. I've spoken of it often when I was just becoming conscious of a spiritual path. It was through an experience that I had with Swami Satchidananda. And it doesn't matter what happened with him or that workshop, but the experience with him threw me into a state. This was 44 years ago, where I was truly in an ecstatic state. I didn't know it then, I wouldn't have named it then, but I was in the world absolutely, only Master could have written Samadhi, because these things are so beyond words. But I only saw the light, the love, the joy. I saw the soul of each being, not the personality. This is a true story. My husband was so concerned about me that he wouldn't let me drive anywhere because I wasn't really grounded. I was just floating. I don't know how to explain it. I was in an altered state, and it was magnificent, and it lasted for 1 month exactly, and then I came out of it. And it was so painful for me. It was so painful to be back with this being, with this ego, with this level of consciousness, not that level of consciousness. But I came to understand, and I grieved for a while. I want to say that. I've had 43 more years to begin to be able to relate to that. I've had moments of it since. And moments could mean an experience, but to live in it for a month or to go there forever in this life, to make that much spiritual progress, I long for it. I long for it. And I've made a great commitment to do as much as I possibly can in this life to get there again. But what I came to see about it and believe about it is that Master was showing me what it is that I'm working towards. It's like helping a child walk with a piece of candy. That's how I thought of it. It was so sweet. Now, I can say, my mind just popped in, I could be very embarrassed about the time I've wasted, really, because as I said last night in my class, enlightenment doesn't really take time. It can come in a moment. But clearly, I haven't done all of what I could have done to get even closer to it. And there are many times in my life I had this experience on Master's birthday, and I'm trying to manifest it now, where I've said, stop everything else, not stop it like you can't work or you can't serve, but quit thinking of it as something separate. It's all God. Practice God every minute of every day, every second of every day. God, doing this with God. That's, oh God, here you are. Everything. For myself, meditate longer. Take more time alone in seclusion. Do all those things for me. This is this soul. You know, for your soul. Yes, if they were real, they were real. I don't know what they were, but I'm just going to believe they were real, and you haven't fallen anywhere. You're here this morning, you're spending a Saturday listening to spiritual questions and some part of the answer to them because you are caring about your path, because you're caring about your soul. Think of all the things you could be doing this morning instead of being here. But you're here. It speaks volumes. So I would never think, please don't hold yourself that way. We actually, we can fall. We can do terrible things, and move backwards. But most souls don't. Swamiji has told us this. We can make a lot of mistakes, but Master himself has said he does not care about our mistakes. He's not even noticing them. He's not looking at them. He's looking at our intention. So don't ever think, don't let those thoughts come, don't get sidetracked that we're a bad person, that we've fallen, that we've done something that's inexcusable. That's impossible. That's impossible for the soul. It cannot happen. Get away from it. As Krishna said, get away from my ocean of suffering. Get away from that suffering as quickly as you can. When it comes back, remind yourself, it's not real. That's not what's real. What's real is our love for God. The soul is love for God. That's the only thing. So do whatever you can do, all of us. I'm speaking to myself as I'm saying it, to not be judgmental of ourselves, to not be critical of ourselves, to be honest when we make a mistake. You know, yesterday I was out walking, and just in the middle of the walk, it came to me that a few weeks ago, in a discussion that I was having with somebody else, that I didn't treat that person well. I wasn't mean. I didn't say anything ugly or bad or mean. But if I pulled up all of the yamas right now, I would find the one, maybe it's non-stealing. Because in that discussion, I didn't give her enough room to express herself. I didn't let her do that and then work with her heart's desire. I jumped into the conversation in a very limited way. And it came to me. And I just said to myself, my goodness, you have to write her a letter of apology. And I will. I haven't had the moment since then, which is what we can do. It's genuine to offer an apology, a true apology. That's not how I want to behave. And I'm so sorry that I limited you. And then she'll get to do with it what she'll do with it. But then I have to put it down and I have to move on and know that's not how I want to behave, and move towards the light, not sit with the darkness. Oh my God, what did I do? In what ways did I hurt her? And that could be there, except it won't help anything. What will help everything is if I can move back towards the light, take that experience and behave better in all of the times that I'll be talking to people for the rest of my life. Remember it, but don't beat myself up with it. These are important lessons as we go, because they allow us, all of those other thoughts, they're like tethers on a balloon. Our soul is the balloon, and there's so many ways that we're holding it down. And one by one, we're learning how to let go of them so our soul can soar, and we're not then this person having occasional experiences. We're living in that. We're living that experience. That's what enlightenment is. That's what samadhi is. Bliss beyond imagination of expectancy. From joy I came, for joy I live. It's just, that's where we're going. So keep heading back there.
I am trying to accept a karmic situation in my life that is painful. But whenever I try to open my heart in acceptance and move from that place of mentally understanding that karma is impersonal toward true heartfelt acceptance and knowing that this is my karma and it's here for my spiritual growth, I'm flooded with the emotion of the circumstance, and the hurt and guilt and anger contract my heart. What do we do to move through that emotion and through the ego's demand for fairness to be able to stand firmly in those spiritual principles that we are striving to live by?
Boy, this has been at the heart of several questions, hasn't it? At the heart of. But let me find some individuality in the karma of this question. I would say, give me one moment. I don't like that, I would say. That's why I went a moment. Let's see what comes. It feels like when those things happen that are big, they're big. The ego is not going to let go of it. And trying to fight it head on, we're going to lose. If we enter the battle that way and we come in with that kind of force, like, I will not be stuck here, I'm going to love and open my heart, it might not work. I'm hearing in the question. What comes to me is find other wonderful ways to serve. Find things to do. Whatever you're doing, I don't know. But find some very clear ways to serve other people, to give, whether in time and energy, cooking for people. Maybe somebody you know needs some money, asking somebody who's lonely to go for a walk with you. Just whatever's in your life. I don't know. I know how I do it. Sometimes the way to, quote unquote, solve this problem, but it's really rise above and beyond it so that our hearts open. It's still there, but we relate to it very differently from a different perspective. And sometimes giving, just giving anywhere, in any way, away from that situation that has you. Because what you say in the end of your question is true. And I forget how you worded it, I don't need to go back there. But you're acknowledging that you can't win by fighting with it head on. You don't say to the devil, okay, I'm going to take you on. You remember the story Master tells when not Master, Swamiji, I'm sorry. He wanted to have an experience of a disembodied being or with a disembodied being. And he called to that spirit to come. He wanted to feel it. And as soon as that spirit got near, he realized that it was very dark, that he did not want to have anything to do with it, and that it was very strong. And I can't remember if he said he felt fear or not, and I don't want to put words, but he did say he knew he needed help, and he immediately started calling for Master, immediately, and then the spirit left. And that's a good story. That's a very good story. That was Swamiji. We can't always just call for Master in this example with the strength of your experience that I'm feeling. May or may not work. I have found a couple of times, I've told this story a lot, when I was sick and dying and I forgot to call on God. I was dying, literally. And I was telling my friends, don't worry if I die. It's not your fault. You've been great. And all of a sudden, a story that Asha had told the previous week, it was this story. It was that story that I just told about Master, about Swamiji calling for Master. She had told that in her Sunday service. We had all heard it, and I think it's in the path, the new path. But she had told this story, and then I was down in Mexico, and I was very weak, and I just started saying like this, Master, Swamiji, Master. And I instantly started feeling better. I felt through their grace, life force, because I had opened that channel for life force to flow. That's a different situation. But it does hold that as much as we can, we should call on them. And there are ways of doing that in the world. Serving is a big way. And I just want to hold on to it for this question because it is what came to me. Go somewhere else and do a lot to love other people. As soon as your heart is open, it cannot hold on to fear, anger, hate, that desire, as you put it so well, that the ego wants things to be fair. We want to be repaid. We want an apology. We want whatever we want. We don't want people to hold us in a way that's not true, but it's their sense, and they're speaking about it like that. So many times where we just want fairness, but fairness is a word of the ego. And the other truth is, as you said, whatever comes to you, it's always our karma. There is no other reality to that. There's no mistakes. It's there, it's yours. Now what are you going to do with it? Hopefully, you'll be able to transform that energy and let it rise. But if that's too big for you, which situations in life are, go somewhere else. Let your heart open somewhere else. I just want to say, because I never know who's asking these questions, that answer for that question to that person feels very deep and right to me. Just feels very unique to that soul. So I just say that with a kind of depth. Find people, find places to serve, and know that it's God serving God. Lakshmi, let me take a moment just to say, if we run out of questions, we just stop. We don't have to go to 11.
Okay. I don't meditate, but I think that I'm a good person and I help others and I'm kind. But there's a lot of conflict in my family and my kids don't get along. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. How can I change our family dynamics?
I'll say two things about that, and I won't try and convince you to meditate, though in the end, honestly, it's the answer to everything. But let's assume that you're not going to meditate. The more you change yourself, the more you live in tune with a spiritual reality, which is, there's hundreds of spiritual qualities. Acceptance, true acceptance of people as they are. Forgiveness, happiness, which is one step down from joy, but it's a good thing. I'm saying one step down because outside of God, Divine Mother, some guru deciding to descend to you and give these qualities to you, which could happen, without meditation for most of us, it doesn't. So we'll say a prayer for you that it comes to you anyway. But if you're not meditating, then bring as many uplifting and uplifted qualities into yourself as you can. When people say to me, how can I change my partner or change my children or make them see? No, we can't. The only person, the only soul we can change ever, no matter what we think, is ourselves. If people come to us genuinely asking for our advice, genuinely, and we give it, hopefully they can take that advice, and hopefully the advice is from an uplifted place, but they can take that and perhaps make some changes within themselves. So it's not that we can never offer something to other people, but we better know that they actually want to hear it. Otherwise, it's a bad thing. You know, I went to one of these, I always forget what they're called, but when people get together over breakfast or lunch, it usually happens, and it's groups of people who want to support each other in whatever professional things they're doing. Networking, these networking things. I went to a networking breakfast once, and the woman who was running it said something, it could feel a little gross, but it's exactly what I'm trying to say. She said, never try and teach a pig to sing. They never get it, and it just makes them angry. And, you know, breakfast was about 20 years ago. Really, I mean it. And there's a lot of truth in it. It's like not casting pearls before swine. It's exactly like that, told in a different way. We can't change anybody. We can't make anybody be any other way. But we can change ourselves and bring a whole other energy into the home. And the other practice that we have to have is not allowing ourselves to become emotionally involved in what's going on with them, but to stay in a place where what we're bringing is calm acceptance and joy. And that's right from our Festival of Light, where it's talking about how do we, I just trying to pull the whole festival in. It almost doesn't matter, but it's talking about how do we evolve spiritually. And it's saying, for us now, we see that the coins of redemption are calm acceptance and joy. They're no longer whatever they were in the past. Anyway, but it's true here. Calm acceptance and joy. Very hard. Very hard. You watch your kids arguing, and you just stay in an uplifted place. Leave the room. Let them argue. Nothing you do, nothing, will have any effect on it anyway. Nothing. You can separate them. You can say, each of you go to your room. Maybe you need to do that. Even if you do that, you know what? I'm going to stop this right now between you. Each of you go to your room. If you're not emotionally involved, it's fine. It's not that you can't do anything, but you can't get emotional and you can't believe you're going to change them or their behavior or make the household outside of you feel better other than by bringing that light in. And the light is in you. This is why Master said, a room can be in darkness for thousands of years. Your house can be crazy for the last 3 years, but the instant you bring in the light, the darkness disappears. Now, don't mistake that. That is true. The darkness disappears, but he's talking about the light in us and the darkness in us. It doesn't mean that your children are going to change or your partner, husband, wife. They may not. They may not. They may not want to be like what you want to be. But what will happen is that you will become peaceful, and that energy will have some effect, whether they become it or not. I know this to be true because I know that the spiritual truth behind it is truth, and I've practiced it. And I've watched the transformation. You can't be mistaken. They will not become who you want them to be. But your peace, your light, your calmness will fill up a space in your home that will begin to expand. And there's a good chance they'll change, though you can't ever be doing it for that reason. It's tricky. It's very tricky. The answer is change yourself. That's the answer.
How do I find a suitable life partner on the spiritual path?
That's hard. We have so many people, it's not really hard. It's just we never know if we're going to do it or not. And then we have to ask ourselves, what's a suitable partner? It may not be what we think it is. So it's interesting. And circumstances are different depending on age, depending on where you are on the spiritual path. Certainly, absolutely pray about it. Really, genuinely pray. I do want a partner, and I'm assuming if you're asking this question, and I would love it to be a soul that's going to help me on the path, not get in my way. So you pray for a partner who can support you in your spiritual effort. Or you say to Master, send me the partner. Well, you see, it's tricky because what does it mean, support me in my spiritual effort? I myself am married to, I'm not really married, but been with somebody for 35 years now who's not on a spiritual path. And I will say that many times when we were younger, 35 years means I didn't even meet him till I was almost 40. But still, that was way younger than I am now. Several times I told him, I can't live with you unless you choose to get on a path. One time I left him for a year, but then I went back. We're meant to be together. It's been very strong. And there's a lot about it that's been great, just in human terms. A lot of fun, a lot of love, a lot of mutual support. There's been a lot about it that's been very, very challenging. But what came to me years ago, and many of you have heard me say it, is that he is in my life, not for the fun that we've had when we've taken trips or whatever, no. I decided to make that happen because I don't want to live a miserable life. What's the point of that? But he was in my life, he is in my life, to teach me about unconditional love. And that is not easy, and it has not always been pleasant, but I feel so much spiritual growth in it. So much spiritual growth. Not because I can love him, even though in moments it feels, if I weren't being unconditional, he could in many moments be unlovable to me. He just being who he's being. But he was sent into my life. So when we pray that prayer, we have to know it's not always what it looks like. And I'll say something else. There are many, many, many people that I've seen on the spiritual path, on this spiritual path, and I've thought, whoa, life is way easier for me than it would be if that was my partner. So what does it mean, to find like the perfect person on a spiritual path? We don't know. We really don't know. There's that wonderful story of Swamiji. These are important stories. Swamiji, there was a woman at the village early on who couldn't find a partner. And Swamiji said to her, write down everything you think you'd want in a partner. And she did. And she brought that list to him. And he read the list, and he waited a moment, and then he looked at her and he said, my dear, you are describing Jesus Christ himself. And do you think Jesus would have you? I mean, it's a very interesting story. So the whole point is to pray and then listen for the answer. And the answer may not look like what you thought it was going to look like. And also to make sure that our behavior again, is in the right place, right-minded, right attitude, open, and keep holding that thought. I want a partner. I want it to be the partner who's going to help me the most on this spiritual path. I said it's complicated because it is. Our mind thinks it knows what it wants. And it is hard to know when that person appears, how much is the ego playing with us or how much is our soul calling us? Very hard. And I will say, this is where, if you're willing, very hard also, to seek spiritual counsel early on. Once you're hooked, once you're there, once you're engaged with that person, then you dive in and make it the best it can be, because no matter what anybody says to you, you're not going to turn around. We've all seen it. I've seen it 1,000 times. When people come to me after they're involved for guidance, no. And a couple of times I've made the mistake. But now I've learned a lesson. No. I just help them be where they are because they're there. So once you're there, you're there. But if you're genuinely wondering, and this just happened also to me, a very dear friend who got into a relationship and was really confused and came and saw me. We spent a lot of time together, still spending time together. Is this relationship right? But once your heart's calling, it's very hard. Then just go into it and do your best to keep the relationship where you want it to be. You just make sure that you're being the best you can be. But the first question, how do I? You just have to pray about it. Just keep praying about it. And trust that when it's the right time, the exact right person will appear. And honestly, if you're at all meditating, spiritually practicing, you'll know in your heart. And sometimes it doesn't look like the right thing to anybody else because they're not living your karma. But you go into that and you make it, as I said, be the best you can be. Commit yourself to it. And just like I did, and it's not the marriage that everybody else would say, oh, look at that, dream come true. No, it's not that. And now I get to giggle about it, but I was not giggling for many years. Wait a minute, where's my perfect man of my dreams? No. But I'm very grateful, because I've done the work that I'm doing it. It's not like it's a done deal. I slip every once in a while. I slipped last week. But mostly, I love him exactly as he is. And that's how I've learned and grown. And then I've been able to take that and extend it towards, and relationships are not always easy, any relationships, but I can love so many souls that I wasn't loving before. I was judging or trying to keep them away or finding fault. I do that so much less often. With the soul, the behavior sometimes needs to be honored, but so the perfect relationship comes in many forms. Listen to your heart. Try and listen to your heart. It's hard. Don't listen to your ego. And lust certainly gets in the way, but what are we going to do about it? It's there. Still listen to your heart.
Is it okay to pray for one's self, to be relieved of physical pain or emotional hurt? I know Swamiji did not pray for himself and I always want to follow his example in my life. I also know that in the Bible it is written, we should knock and the door will open. Seek and ye shall find. So, should a devotee pray for himself? I always tell Master and Swamiji and Divine Mother I love them. And if I feel any physical pain or emotional pain, I want to accept it with gratitude.
That's a very good question, and that's a very good answer. I mean, everything you just said. I think I'll almost repeat what you said because your answer is in the question. It's confused me too, by the way, and I can't say it's complicated because we did hear Swamiji say that he wouldn't pray for himself, but he did say, if you want me to serve these people. So he was talking to God throughout every moment of every experience. But that kidney stone story that you're probably relating to right now, when he was passing a stone and he was in so much pain, but he still stayed with God about it. And in a prayerful way said to God, if you want me to go and give this talk, you're going to have to help me. You're going to have to do something with this pain. And that's one way, a beautiful way of praying, to say to God, this is hindering me, you decide. But I think the other prayer, because what I would never say is, please take this pain away. I don't pray that way for myself. I wouldn't pray that way for anybody. But I often pray that says, please be with, I'm saying them because honestly, I've never had any real major medical problems or severe pain. I mean, I just went through a couple weeks of back pain, but I never thought to ask that it be taken away. I haven't gone through very much. That's what I'm saying. And I've felt that I could be at the center of what it was. So even with that severe back pain that I just had, where I was either in a wheelchair or a couple of times, literally, Keshava picked me up and carried me where I needed to be because I just couldn't walk. But I was in a good place. I was sort of happy and doing what we were doing. We were cooking a Thanksgiving meal. I was sitting very still. Everybody else was cooking. But it just didn't dawn on me to ask that it go away. I just watched it, sat with it. But I think that we can talk to God and say, make sure that God knows that we're calling on him to be present with us and to do what he feels is right for us with that pain. So that's a prayer. And the other side of it is what you said. If we can, not always easy when you're in a lot of pain, and particularly if that pain's lasting, or you think it's going to become a chronic pain, that's harder than if you feel like this is pretty bad, but it's going to go away, which is where I was. It's easier. We can tolerate anything for a while and then it leaves. But to constantly be, the prayer can be, I'm here with this pain. I want to make sure you're noticing that I'm in pain. Do with it what you will, and I'll do my best to accept it, knowing that everything comes to me as an opportunity for spiritual growth. And everything does. That's really the truth. I'm sure I'm missing something, some other answer. I would love to invite somebody else to answer, but I'm not sure if it would be disruptive or not. I think I'll just pass on that for this. But I think that's what I would say is yes, pray, but it's not the prayer is not just take this pain, but the prayer, which means the connection with God, is very important during physical or emotional pain. That's what I'll say. And that I believe to be the truth.
I think this might be a nice question to end on for today. We'll see if we have time. If the soul loves to meditate, why does the mind resist? Can you offer any suggestions for how to get through that resistance?
Well, the mind resists because if meditation's successful, we leave the mind. I mean, we transcend it. So the resistance is really that the negative pulling side of this, of duality, really, how we've split into a dual nature. And the part, which we could call, and we do call, Satan, that part that's pulling us away from what we always call the light, but it's our true self, our soul, our uplifted, enlightened, free, expanded, in sacred joy, I melt self. The ego, that's the death of the ego, because the ego is the soul identified with the body. So if the soul transcends all of that, there is no ego. So, and Satan, which is a very real force, as we know, is pulling on us in the form of ego, and always ego, but it looks like many experiences, examples throughout our life, really wants to win. There's that song in Swamiji's oratorio, the life of Jesus, really. I won't be able to pull up the words right now because I'd have to sing it to do it, and none of you would appreciate that. But the song is of the ego in the form of the devil. The devil comes and he's trying to tempt everyone. Look at what I can offer you. I'll give you everything in this world. And then God himself steps in. Get thee behind me, Jesus did say. Meaning, everybody come here, come to the light. He's basically pushing the devil out. It's a very powerful song when you hear it done by this, usually quartet. Quartet? Yeah. So it's a strong force. And when you say, it's interesting, I'm giving service tomorrow. I actually haven't read the reading, but I did read the Bible quote. And the quote is, the light shineth, but the darkness perceived it not. That's probably not exactly the words, but whatever it is. And I will speak a lot to that tomorrow. But the more we can awaken that light within us, the more that we can. And it's just in essence what I've been saying. Then we start to outshine the darkness. And we can think of that light and darkness in two different ways. And again, I haven't really thought that much about my sermon, but it immediately came to me that there's two ways to think about that. Because this quote from the Bible says, the light was there, but the darkness didn't see it. And yet Master says, a room can be in darkness for thousands of years, and the minute you turn on the light, the darkness disappears. So how can those both be true? Which is, again, part of tomorrow. But the answer is only the more effort that you can make, and not hard, gritty effort, but the more lightness of being you can bring and enjoy that experience, the mind gets outshined, is what I'll say, because I'm talking about light. You cannot fight with the mind. So you need to, and that's the whole point of meditation. Every single one of us has that struggle. I promise you, every one of us, we would not be in these human bodies if we didn't. We do not sit to meditate and have a completely empty mind, or in that moment, the energy shoots up our astral spine, if nothing's impeding it, which means no mind, and we are in a state of samadhi. Otherwise, every one of us has the mind come in when we're meditating. And we just have to, as clearly and with as much focus and effort as we can, just keep coming back. There's no other answer. You can stop if you want and read Whispers from Eternity. You can read an affirmation. You can write a prayer. If the mind is just screaming at you, that's very unpleasant. But the more we say to our mind, I'm not coming. We don't fight with it. I've often said it's like, treat it like a cloud, like you would, gently. Just push it away at the same time that you're bringing your focus back. It's a habit that we have to develop and a skill that we have to develop. And then in that way, we beat the mind. We don't beat it by going to war with it directly. It won't work that way. We have to deal within ourselves with each little part of what will allow us. But we're focused there. We're climbing this ladder, and it's work. We all know that. So there's no easy answer to that, except to live as much as you can with Master, with Swamiji, with all of the masters, with the music. You know, a friend of mine just gave me a wonderful Christmas present. I'm actually feeling it change my meditation, change my mood, change my ability to be calm, and I mean that in a very uplifted way, not relaxed. He gave me this little thing. I don't know what it is, but he made a card that goes in it. This is all electronic, so that it constantly plays Swamiji chanting Om. Constantly, there's no break. And you just recharge the battery, and then whenever you want it on, which is now pretty much, I leave it on in my home. It's just on. It's there. Even when I go to sleep, I usually can't stand anything light or noise, but this is not noise. This is at the lowest level of vibration coming in that I can tell you. Maybe he gave it to me 2 weeks ago. I mean, I don't remember, but exactly, but I think it was about 2 weeks. I feel it changing me. I feel it making it easier for me to sit for longer periods of time, though I don't play it throughout my meditation. Every other time I play it, but not during meditation. So whatever we can do to genuinely alter the vibration in our astral spine makes it easier to sit with less mind. There's many ways to do it. It's what we've been talking about all morning. So we'll all be praying that all of our meditations become not just easier, it's not about easier, but more focused, more God-centered, more love-filled, more often knowing without a doubt that God is there with us, even if we haven't yet made it to that place of bliss beyond imagination, of expectancy beyond all mind, even if we're not there. And you know, there's one other thing I'll just say, and I'll close with this. We talked about it a lot at Master's birthday, in the meditation that preceded Master's birthday, which unfortunately was not recorded. It was a superb program for meditation. And in it, Lahari and Biraj played master reading Samadhi. He probably wasn't reading it, he just knows it. With music in the background, it's beautiful. You can find it in, I forget which CD it's on.
It's also on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. Okay, that's easier. Swami Kriyananda reading Yogananda's prayer, Samadhi. But I didn't know they were going to do that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Samadhi before I got here when I gave a talk that night. But it just worked in so perfectly to talk about. Master told us to read that every day and to memorize it. And I said, I've known that every day that I've been on this path, and I haven't done it. I've read the poem Samadhi many times, but not every day. And I hadn't memorized it. And now I'm in the process of memorizing it. It's part of my morning sadhana, just a couple lines at a time. But I'll do it. I'll get there. And it's so beautiful. And I wanted to say that because so many questions today are talking about how do I focus? How do I bring my mind back? How do I advance in the world? How do I get stability in the world? How do I help my family? How do I stop my mind from driving me crazy during meditation? In some ways, the answer to every question is be with God as much as you can. And I will tell you, because now I'm practicing it, so now I can say it. Read the poem Samadhi. Read it. Because the vibration of it, Master's vibration, is right there. And it just carries us on this path. It takes us mindlessly where we want to be going. It's so beautiful, and it starts making more and more and more sense. Like we can feel it and be it and know it. Lines that I never understood, they're beginning to. Just like, oh, look at that, or feel that. It's an awakening to a spiritual awakening towards Samadhi. It would be the answer to every question today. So, go with love, everybody. Go with God. In the name of the Masters, I'm sending out blessings to all of you, great souls who are earnestly making such an effort. And I could say for sure, the Masters know, and they are right with you.